Hello. Thank you for your continuous support, this means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel. Now, let's dive into the details of today's story. Growing up in the Knox household meant learning early that the spotlight only had room for one name, and it wasn't mine. Jasper's trophies filled every visible surface like golden shrines. The living room shelves sagged under the weight of his baseball medals, framed, team photos, and a giant cutout of him, mid-swing from a county fair tournament, that Dad had made like some proud PR stunt. Meanwhile, my certificate for placing second in the state engine rebuild challenge folded into a drawer, next to old taxpayers and expired coupons. Mom didn't even pretend to care. "Well, it's not like people go to school to fix motorcycles," she'd mutter, barely glancing up from boiling pasta, before launching into Jasper's stats, like he was bound for Coopertown. I stopped mentioning my wins after that. What was the point? In high school, while Jasper was chauffeured to training camps and private coaches, I scraped together gas money fixing neighbors' lawnmowers and doing oil changes in the back alley behind school. Every dollar went toward parts for my rusted-out '83 Suzuki. It wasn't pretty, but it was mine. I rebuilt that engine 3 times before it ran smooth, and even then, I kept tuning it just to feel like I had control over something. Mom tried pushing me towards softball once, bought a cheap glove, dragged me to tryouts. I struck out twice, didn't even make the list. She didn't come to auto club after school. She never saw me strip down an engine block faster than half the boys in shop class. I didn't care. Not really. Not when I had grease under my nails and a wrench in my hand. That was home. At 18, the day after Jasper signed with a minor league team, my parents hosted a barbecue with 30 guests and a rented tent in the backyard. I watched from the window as they toasted him like royalty. No one noticed me walking out the front door, with nothing but a duffel bag, my socket set, and the Suzuki humming beneath me. I rode 8 miles out of town to a garage I'd leased with my savings, a small, dusty place with a cracked floor and no insulation, but it was mine. Nova curled up on a blanket by the tool chest tail, thumping like she knew we were starting something. I unlocked the door, breathed in the silence, and got to work. The shop didn't look like much those first few months, peeling paint, flickering lights, and a cot I dragged behind a wall of tires just to sleep upright. But I didn't care. I took jobs no one wanted, fixing cracked fairings, rewiring busted lighting systems, salvaging bikes that looked beyond hope. Word started to spread. "Ask the garage girl," people said. "She'll fix it. She actually listens to the engine." Most days I worked until my hands ached and the metal felt fused to my skin. Nova stayed curled beside the bay door, ears flicking at every buzz of a wrench or the clatter of dropped bolts. She was my constant, my only witness. Then came Milo. It was early February, cold enough that my breath fogged inside the shop. I was hunched over a carburetor when I heard the soft thud of footsteps and the scent of cinnamon hit me like a memory I hadn't earned. I looked up. He held out a cardboard cup with steam curling from the lid. "And quote, you look like you run on fumes," end quote, he said, half a smile playing on his lips. End quote, consider it an early peace offering, new neighbor tax. End quote, I took it without a word, not because I trusted him, because it was warm. Because no one had handed me anything without expecting something back in years. I sipped. He didn't linger. Later that day, I realized it was my birthday. Milo didn't know that, but it stuck. He started showing up every few mornings after that. Never pushed, never lingered long, just small things, a muffin, a refill, a quiet joke about the bikes I resurrected. I learned he'd been a field medic in the army. Now he ran the cafe 2 doors down. Said the smell of engines reminded him of something solid. Said I reminded him of someone who didn't quit. I didn't say much, but I stopped locking the front door when I worked alone. And when Nova wagged her tail as soon as she heard his boots, I let her. Milo didn't ask about my family, and I didn't offer. That was its own kind of peace. By the time spring rolled around, I'd almost convinced myself I could build a whole life here, one engine, one coffee, one quiet kindness at a time. I drifted in and out, heat, then cold, then nothing. I felt the sting of air against skin slick with sweat and blood. Somewhere far away, Nova barked. It wasn't her usual bark, this was frantic, broken over and over. My girl was trying to sound the alarm, then heavy steps. Cambria, Milo's voice, it cracked through the haze like lightning. I tried to move but couldn't, my limbs wouldn't respond. Oh my God, he breathed. I felt hands on me, strong and sure. The sound of his belt sliding, loose, the quick tug as he cinched it above my thigh so tight it sent a bolt of pain up my spine. I screamed, or maybe just whimpered. I couldn't tell anymore. End quote. You're okay. End quote. He muttered, his breath close to my face. I got you. You're not dying today. Stay with me, Cam. He was on the phone with someone, barking out instructions. Arterial bleed, tourniquet applied. Female, late 20s, unconscious but responsive. I wanted to tell him I wasn't unconscious, just floating. I could hear everything. His voice, the way his hands didn't hesitate, even though they were slick with my blood, Nova pressing her wet nose against my face like she could anchor me. You hear me? Milo said, his voice low and fierce. Now. Help's coming. You stay with me, Cambria. That's an order. Somewhere in me, something held on. The sound of sirens came faintly in the distance, then closer. Then the rush of boots, more voices, the clatter of equipment. Someone lifted me. My vision flickered, white light stabbed my eyes. End quote. She's got a pulse, pressure's low. End quote. Someone said. End quote. Let's move. End quote. Milo's hand squeezed mine before they pulled me away. 5 more minutes and we'd have lost her, one paramedic muttered. I couldn't speak, but I knew 5 minutes was all it took to show me who actually showed up and who never would. When I opened my eyes again, everything was white. The hospital lights never dimmed. It was always either too bright or too quiet, except for the machines beeping like a metronome for the pain I wasn't ready to name. My leg was bandaged from thigh to ankle, packed with gauze and metal pins. The nurse told me I'd needed emergency surgery, that I'd lost more blood than most people survive. I nodded like that meant something. It didn't. Not yet. Milo stayed every day. He brought food I could actually chew, sat by my bed when I couldn't sleep. Rubbed Nova behind the ears when she refused to leave my side. He didn't push, didn't ask for backstory, just stayed. On day 3, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered without thinking. Cambria, my father's voice said, flat and businesslike. Your mother and I need help. Jasper's having a few issues with his relocation. We need $25,000. No. How are you? No, we heard what happened. Just Jasper again. I blinked. I almost died, I said, my voice quiet, shaking. You hung up when I was begging you to help me. And now you're calling for him. There was a pause, just long enough to prove he didn't know what to say. Then you're being dramatic. It was just an injury. You're alive, aren't you? I hung up. I opened my banking app and stared at the line that read monthly family transfer, $1,000. It had been set 5 years ago, back when they said the mortgage was tight. When I thought maybe if I helped they'd finally see me, I canceled it just like that. 5 years gone in 3 taps. Milo saw me shaking afterward. He didn't ask, just reached for my phone, scrolled through the voicemails and deleted the ones from my parents. You've already bled for them, end quote, he said quietly. End quote, time to stop paying for the wounds, too. End quote, the word settled in my chest like a breath I hadn't known I was holding. And for the first time, I let myself exhale. The surgeon didn't flinch when he said it, end quote. You'll walk again, but not like before. End quote. I waited for the follow-up, something softer. It didn't come. You won't be able to stand for long stretches or crouch or lift more than 30 lb safely. That kind of physical demand, it's no longer viable. His words rang louder than the machines behind him. I nodded, but inside everything fell silent. Back at the apartment, I sat in front of my toolbox for over an hour, just sat there staring at the drawers I used to open 10 times a day without thinking. I ran my hand over the cold steel like I was saying goodbye to something sacred. Nova nudged my elbow once, then curled up at my feet. Her way of saying, end quote, I'm still here. End quote. Milo didn't try to fill the silence. He just brought me tea and waited. End quote. You're not broken, end quote, he said, finally sitting across from me, end quote. You just have to build a different kind of machine now. End quote. I looked up, not following. End quote. Teach. End quote. I laughed under my breath. End quote. Teach what? How to ruin your career with one bad angle. No, he said, teach them how to do what you do. You built something out of nothing. Kids don't learn that in trade school. Start with Leanne. Leanne was 17, curious, and had been lurking around the garage since last summer. She asked 1,000 questions but never got in the way. I figured it was worth a shot. I called her. She showed up the next morning, carrying a composition notebook and eyes too wide for someone so determined. We sat at my kitchen table. I pulled out an old carburetor and walked her through the rebuild. She took notes like her life depended on it. 3 days later, she brought her cousin, then a friend. By the end of the week, I had 3 teenagers sitting on the garage floor, passing around parts and asking things like, end quote, so torque specs really matter, huh? End quote. I didn't realize I was smiling until Milo caught me from the door frame and nodded. It was messy. It was slow. I had to sit more than I stood, but it didn't matter. They listened. They cared. And for the first time since the accident, I stopped measuring my worth in horsepower and engine noise and started counting it in questions answered in light bulb moments. Maybe I wasn't done building after all. Maybe I just needed to learn how to build in a new direction. It was a Tuesday when they showed up. No warning, no call, just at the sound of tires crunching the gravel outside the shop. I glanced out the window and froze. My father stepped out first, adjusting his jacket like he was arriving for a meeting. Beatrice followed her heels, clacking on the pavement, mouth already tight with judgment. I didn't move to greet them, just opened the door and let the silence do the talking. They stepped inside, both giving the space a quick once-over. Dad's gaze flicked past the student cubbies, the tool carts, the mounted whiteboard listing this week's lessons. He looked unimpressed. Mom wrinkled her nose at the faint scent of oil and polish. End quote. We need to talk, end quote, Dad said flatly. I said nothing. End quote. There's been an issue with Jasper's contract. Mom started placing her purse on the corner of my desk like it belonged there. Some complication with the buyout clause. He's being forced to pay it if he wants to sign elsewhere. It's not fair. He needs help. I kept my arms crossed. We've explored every option, she continued. The buyout's about $40,000. If you sell this place now, it would cover it. Jasper would get a fresh start, and you can rebuild something new once you're healed. You're not really using this space the way you used to anyway. She's just sitting on it, she added, her voice light, dismissive. Like my work, my recovery was a hobby I was playing at. The tension cracked. End quote. She almost died, end quote, Milo said, stepping forward from the back office. His voice didn't rise, but it hit like thunder. End quote. She was bleeding out on this floor, and you didn't even call back. End quote, and now you show up, end quote, asking her to give up the one thing she fought to survive for my parents. Both turned startled by his presence. End quote. Mom lifted her chin. End quote. This is a family matter. She is family. End quote. I said, he is. You're just people I used to know. Warren's mouth opened, some mix of offense and confusion, curling into a grimace. Get out, I said calmly. Now, neither of them moved. Go, Milo added, before you embarrass yourselves worse than you already have. They left. No apology, no fight, just the creak of the door and their silhouettes fading into the late sun. I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just stood there letting the silence settle in the space they could no longer touch. After they left, I expected to feel hollow. Instead, something inside me clicked into place, like a bolt finally tightened after years of rattling loose. I didn't need a grand reckoning. I just needed the door to stay closed behind them. Milo came back into the garage an hour later, 2 mugs of tea in hand. Still standing, he said gently, offering one. That's something. I sat on the edge of the workbench, the tension in my shoulders finally starting to loosen. I don't want them here. Not ever again. Not in this space. Then let's build something they'll never be welcome in. The next day he brought it up again. The idea that had been circling for weeks now, with more weight behind it. We should make it official, he said, tapping his fingers on the lesson plan taped beside the tool rack. You're already teaching, let's turn this into a real school. I looked around. It still looked like a garage. Grease-streaked floors, dented metal cabinets, a cracked window with a taped corner. But I saw it differently now. What would it even take? A name, he said. A structure, a little money, and your blessing. So we sat down that night at his cafe after closing and wrote out what it could be. Course, outlines, safety protocols, enrollment plans. Milo researched licensing while I sketched out the first 12-week program, from memory, starting with basic maintenance, moving into diagnostics, then hands-on builds. We named it Nova, Cycle Institute, after the dog who saved me and the idea that rebirth sometimes starts in fire. Milo used part of his savings to cover the registration and insurance. I used mine to buy upgraded tools and foldable workbenches. We submitted the paperwork 2 weeks later, and within a month we were certified as an independent vocational program. Word spread fast. Leanne brought 2 more friends. Then came a kid from the next town over who'd heard about the motorcycle woman who teaches for real. By the end of the 2nd month, we had 11 regular students, mostly kids, who couldn't afford trade school or didn't feel like they belonged anywhere else. I watched them handle torque wrenches with careful fingers, asking questions I used to be scared to ask myself. They reminded me who I used to be. And slowly, day by day, I stopped seeing the garage as a place I had to let go of and started seeing it as the place I was meant to begin again. The text came in late after I'd shut down the garage for the night. Milo was upstairs washing dishes. Nova was curled beside me, her breathing soft against my leg. Jasper, we need help. Mom and Dad are freaking out. The team's pulled out. I need to buy back in or I lose everything, please, family helps family. I stared at the screen numb. The last time he'd used the word family, I was bleeding out on cold concrete while he toasted a signing bonus. My thumb hovered over the reply button. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but another part, the part that still remembered my hands shaking as I called them that day, needed to say it. You weren't family when I was bleeding out, Milo is. Then I blocked his number. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there for a while, my phone face down, on the couch cushion, Nova's head warm on my thigh. Outside, the street lights buzzed softly. Inside, I felt something settle, something final. The next morning, I asked Milo to meet me at the lawyer's office. Are you sure? He asked, after I told him what I wanted. Yeah, I said. I don't want them anywhere near me, if something happens again. And I want everything to go to someone who showed up. We updated my will. If anything ever took me out early again, the shop, the curriculum, my savings, everything would go to Milo and the kids we'd been teaching. I left the office with a strange sense of relief, like setting down a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying for most of my life. That night, I walked through the garage after closing. The tools were still lined up on the back wall. Leanne's notes were stacked on the corner desk. Milo had added new fire extinguishers without me asking, and Nova was snoring under the bench like always. This wasn't a backup life. This was my real one, and I wasn't giving it up. Not for guilt, not for blood, and definitely not for the people who walked away when I needed them most. 3 years later, the waiting list for Nova Cycle Institute is 3 months long. We expanded the back room into a second workshop, added night classes, even got a small grant from a local trades initiative. Most of our students come in quiet, uncertain, unsure of what their hands can do. I see pieces of myself in each of them. Milo and I got married in the spring. Nothing fancy, just us, a few close friends, and Nova wearing a bow tie that she hated but tolerated. She still sleeps beside my bench most days, her gray muzzle twitching as she dreams. I walk through the shop every evening before locking up. There's a plaque now on the wall above the first workbench. Milo surprised me with it. We don't repair what broke us. We build what frees us. Underneath, he'd etched something smaller just for me. Cambria, Knox found her. I run my fingers across the letters every night before flipping the lights. Some names will never hang on these walls. They chose absence. I chose legacy. And in this place, this life I made, I'm finally more than what they left behind.